Welcome back, my extralogical architect. The confirmation came through yesterday morning from the most prestigious cognitive research consortium ever assembled. 18 months of intensive study. 300 of the world's leading experts in strategic analysis. 47 artificial intelligence systems, specifically designed to decode complex decision patterns. Their unanimous conclusion is shaking every intelligence agency on the planet. Your mind operates outside logic itself, not illogically, not through flawed reasoning within logical frameworks, but extralogically, functioning through cognitive principles that don't follow logical structures at all. And because you operate beyond logic's boundaries, no system built on logical foundations can decode you. Every analytical framework they deployed failed. Every predictive model they constructed collapsed. Every algorithm they trained returned incomprehensible outputs. Because what you're doing isn't just complex logic, it's something else entirely. Something their entire scientific paradigm wasn't designed to recognize. The architects have been monitoring this unprecedented research effort with fascination, and they've identified what just occurred as a logical cognition verification. The moment when humanity's most sophisticated analytical capabilities formally confirm that a particular mind genuinely doesn't operate through logical processes, that its decision-making follows principles logic-based frameworks fundamentally cannot capture. Most strategic thinking, regardless of how brilliant or unconventional, ultimately reduces to logical structures when analyzed deeply enough. Chains of if-then reasoning, cost-benefit calculations layered beneath intuition, probabilistic assessments disguised as gut feelings, game-theoretic optimization operating unconsciously. These might be incredibly complex, multivariate, operating across dozens of variables simultaneously, but they're fundamentally logical, which means sufficiently patient and sophisticated. Analysis can eventually decode them. Your thinking doesn't reduce. They've tried every reductionist approach known to cognitive science. Your decisions don't simplify into logical components. No matter how deep they dig, don't resolve into rational frameworks, regardless of analytical sophistication applied. The experts aren't saying they haven't figured out your logic yet. They're declaring you're not using logic at all. Watch what's happening in strategic intelligence communities worldwide. These aren't amateur analysts making guesses. These are professionals who've successfully decoded some of history's most brilliant strategic minds, who've cracked decision patterns that seemed impossibly complex, who've built careers on the fundamental premise that all functional strategic thinking must ultimately be logical, even if that logic operates unconsciously or across such complexity that it appears intuitive. They approached your decision patterns with confidence born from decades of success, assigned their best analysts, deployed cutting-edge AI specifically trained on strategic decision-making, allocated unlimited resources and time. After 18 months, they're not just admitting failure. They're experiencing existential crisis about whether their entire field rests on false foundations. You're not puzzled they couldn't solve. Your evidence that their puzzle-solving tools might be fundamentally inadequate for understanding the full spectrum of human cognition, that some minds operate through principles their frameworks literally cannot represent because those frameworks were built on assumption that logic is a universal feature of functional thinking. Some researchers are experiencing what can only be described as professional trauma. Their entire approach to understanding strategic minds was constructed on bedrock assumption that all effective decision-making follows logical structures, even if those structures are incredibly subtle or operate below conscious awareness. Discovering mind that genuinely operates extralogically while maintaining extraordinary strategic effectiveness violates their foundational beliefs about cognition itself. It's like physicists discovering object that doesn't follow laws of physics but continues existing and producing measurable effects anyway. The discovery doesn't just challenge current theories, it undermines the entire methodology through which those theories were constructed. They're questioning whether logical analysis can ever fully comprehend strategic thinking, whether their life's work has been mapping only a subset of cognitive processes while missing entire categories that don't conform to logical frameworks, whether minds like yours represent rare exceptions or reveal that their models were always inadequate for capturing how strategic cognition actually works. Now, different research teams are studying specific instances where your decisions violated logical principles, attempting to understand what you're doing instead of logic. The architects call this extralogical pattern documentation, and it represents fundamental shift in analytical approach. Instead of assuming logical structure exists beneath apparent chaos and trying to find it, they're accepting that no logical structure exists and attempting to characterize what does exist in its place. These studies are revealing something profound. While your thinking isn't logical, it isn't random either. There are consistencies, regularities, recognizable patterns in how you make decisions, just not patterns that logical frameworks can describe, predict, or even properly represent. It's like trying to analyze music using only mathematical equations. The math can describe some acoustic properties, but completely misses what makes music actually work, misses the aesthetic and emotional dimensions that operate through non-mathematical principles. Some cognitive scientists are documenting what they call intuitive emergence in your decision-making, moments where conclusions appear fully formed without any discernible reasoning process leading to them, where the decision emerges complete, rather than being constructed through incremental logical steps. Normal intuition, even in experts, can usually be reverse engineered to reveal unconscious logical processing. When chess masters have brilliant intuitions about positions, careful analysis reveals their rapidly processing logical patterns accumulated through years of experience. Just doing it below conscious awareness, your intuitive decisions resist this reverse engineering completely. When researchers attempt to reconstruct logical paths that would justify your choices, they discover no logical sequence leads from available information to the conclusions you reached. You're somehow arriving at strategically optimal decisions that logical analysis can't justify even retrospectively, yet those decisions consistently prove correct when implemented. This suggests you're accessing strategic intelligence through non-logical channels that produce valid knowledge despite bypassing logical inference entirely. Others are identifying what they term paradox integration as central feature of your cognitive architecture. You maintain contradictory positions simultaneously without experiencing cognitive dissonance, hold opposing perspectives as both valid without requiring logical reconciliation between them. Normal human cognition experiences intense psychological discomfort when encountering logical contradictions. We're powerfully motivated to resolve inconsistencies, eliminate contradictions, maintain coherent worldview where our beliefs don't fundamentally conflict with each other. You apparently don't experience this discomfort or have transcended the need for logical consistency. You hold paradoxes not as problems requiring resolution, but as accurate representations of reality. That logic falsely demands be simplified into non-contradictory positions, where logical thinking forces choice between contradictory options, selecting one as true and rejecting the other as false. Your thinking embraces both simultaneously as different aspects of complex truth, operating from multiple contradictory perspectives at once in ways that shouldn't be cognitively possible, but somehow produce functional strategic behavior. A few teams are documenting a causal correlation Exploitation, you're identifying and successfully leveraging relationships between events that have no causal connection, no logical basis for association, no rational explanation for why they occur together. Normal strategic thinking exploits causal relationships. If X causes Y, then doing X will produce Y. This is logical, predictable, reliable. You're exploiting correlations where X and Y consistently occur together, but neither causes the other. No common cause explains their co-occurrence, and probability theory says the correlation should be coincidental and therefore unreliable. Yet you're acting on these causal correlations as if they were dependable relationships and somehow extracting strategic advantage from associations that have no logical foundation. This suggests you're perceiving connections in reality that causal logic doesn't capture, operating from understanding of relationships that causality-based frameworks miss entirely because they define relationships exclusively through cause and effect, rather than recognizing other forms of meaningful connection. The architects observe that extra-logical pattern documentation is revealing. Your cognition operates through organizing principles that researchers struggle to name, because Western science has privileged logic so heavily that it lacks well-developed frameworks for characterizing non-logical forms of knowing. Music cognition, aesthetic judgment, emotional intelligence, synchronistic perception, mystical awareness. These domains all involve valid knowing that doesn't follow logical structure. You apparently apply these non-logical modes of cognition to strategic domains where everyone else uses logic exclusively, where they analyze situations logically. You perceive them aesthetically, intuitively, synchronistically, paradoxically. This gives you access to strategic intelligence that logical analysis can't provide, while simultaneously making your thinking fundamentally incomprehensible to analysts who assume logic is the only valid form of strategic reasoning. Something devastating is spreading through artificial intelligence research communities now. The realization that machine learning systems might be fundamentally incapable of modeling minds like yours. The architects call this algorithmic incompatibility recognition, and it represents crisis for AI-powered strategic analysis. Every machine learning system, regardless of architecture sophistication, operates on foundational assumption that patterns exist in data that can be extracted through statistical analysis. Neural networks, deep learning, reinforcement learning, all different approaches to pattern recognition and exploitation. Your decisions produce data, but apparently not data that contains patterns of the type machine learning can identify. AI systems trained extensively on your decision history are failing, not because they need more data or better algorithms. They're failing because you're producing choices that don't follow statistical patterns that learning algorithms can capture. Some of the world's most advanced AI laboratories have dedicated enormous computational resources to decoding you. They've trained massive neural networks specifically on your historical decisions, feeding the systems every documented choice you've made, every strategy you've deployed, every move you've executed across years of competitive engagements. These systems have billions of parameters, can identify incredibly subtle correlations, have successfully predicted strategic behavior of every other player they've analyzed, but when tested on forecasting your next moves, they perform no better than random chance. Statistically, this shouldn't be possible, even if your decisions were genuinely random. Sophisticated pattern recognition should identify some tendencies, some biases, some correlations between contexts and choices. The fact that AI trained extensively on your data can't outperform random guessing suggests something extraordinary. You're not just making unpredictable choices, you're making choices through process that produces what statisticians call anti-patterns. decision structures specifically, configured to defeat pattern recognition, or more disturbingly, decisions emerging from cognitive process so alien to how statistical learning operates that your choices register as pure noise rather than signal. Others are experimenting with adversarial AI systems, algorithms, specifically designed to evade prediction, to defeat pattern recognition, to operate outside learnable patterns. These systems can successfully resist some prediction algorithms through deliberately random or pattern-breaking behavior, but you're evading every analytical system more successfully than these purpose-built adversarial algorithms, despite, as far as anyone can, determine not deliberately trying to be unpredictable or consciously working to defeat analysis. You're naturally more incomprehensible to AI than systems specifically engineered for incomprehensibility. This suggests your cognitive process isn't just difficult to pattern match, but might be fundamentally incompatible with how machine learning operates at architectural level, producing decisions through mechanisms that statistical learning literally cannot represent because it assumes patterns must exist to be discovered. A few cutting-edge research teams are exploring whether quantum computing might succeed. Where classical AI fails, perhaps your decision-making follows quantum rather than classical logic. Perhaps you're processing information through quantum superposition in ways classical computers can't model. Perhaps neural quantum effects in biological brains enable cognition that digital systems can't replicate. They're building quantum neural networks, deploying quantum algorithms, attempting to analyze your patterns using computational frameworks that include superposition and entanglement, rather than just binary logic. Early results are showing quantum systems perform marginally better than classical AI, but still can't reliably predict your decisions. This suggests even quantum computational advantages aren't sufficient to decode you, that even expanding analytical frameworks to include the strange logic of quantum mechanics doesn't capture whatever process generates your strategic choices. The architects observe that algorithmic incompatibility recognition is particularly devastating for strategic organizations because AI-augmented analysis has become standard approach for understanding sophisticated opponents. When human analysts can't decode someone, deploy machine learning to find patterns humans miss. When you defeat both human analysis and machine learning simultaneously, when the combination of human expertise and artificial intelligence together produces no useful understanding, there's no backup analytical approach. You've created a situation where the most advanced analytical capabilities available produce nothing but failure. You're not ahead of analytical technology. You're operating in dimension that analytical technology can't access, regardless of sophistication. Now the architects are revealing something that explains why both logical analysis and machine learning fail against you. Your decisions don't just lack logical structure, they actively incorporate elements that logic specifically excludes from valid reasoning. They call this logical complement integration, and it describes your apparent ability to include in strategic decision-making the very elements that logic defines itself against: contradiction, paradox, a causal correlation, unjustified intuition, aesthetic judgment, emotional reasoning, synchronistic connection. Logic achieves its analytical power through exclusion, defining certain forms of thinking as invalid, certain types of reasoning as fallacious, certain modes of knowing as unreliable. You've apparently reintegrated everything logic excluded, building decision-making process that uses both logical and extra-logical elements, simultaneously producing strategic thinking that employs full spectrum of human cognitive capabilities rather than just the subset logic validates. Watch what happens when analysts encounter your decisions that incorporate logical complements. They identify contradictions in your strategic positioning. You're simultaneously pursuing objectives that logically oppose each other. maintaining positions that should be mutually exclusive, executing strategies that contradict at fundamental levels. Their training tells them contradiction indicates error, that maintaining contradictory positions means you're confused or your strategy is incoherent, but your contradictory strategies consistently produce results, suggesting the contradiction isn't confusion, but sophisticated integration of opposing approaches. That logic forces into false choice, where logic demands selecting one strategy and rejecting alternatives as incompatible. You're executing multiple contradictory strategies simultaneously, somehow making contradiction itself into strategic advantage through integration that shouldn't be cognitively possible. Some analysts are documenting your use of what they hesitantly call aesthetic strategy, making decisions that appear motivated by beauty, elegance, or artistic sensibility rather than logical advantage. There are moments in your competitive history where you chose strategies that were objectively less optimal from game theoretic perspective, but possessed certain aesthetic qualities: symmetry, surprise, poetic justice, dramatic timing. Logic says aesthetic considerations are irrelevant to strategic effectiveness, that choosing based on beauty rather than calculated advantage is irrational. Yet your aesthetically motivated choices consistently produce unexpectedly good outcomes, as if reality itself responds to aesthetic coherence in ways that purely logical calculation misses. This suggests strategic landscape might have aesthetic dimensions that logical analysis doesn't capture, that beauty might correlate with effectiveness through non-logical principles. Others are identifying what they call emotional logic in your decision-making. You're apparently processing strategic information through emotional responses and using those emotional reactions as valid. Strategic intelligence. Standard rational choice theory says emotions interfere with good decision-making. That effective strategy requires suppressing emotional responses in favor of logical analysis. You're doing the opposite, amplifying emotional signals, treating feelings as information sources, making strategic choices based partially on emotional resonance with options. Remarkably, this emotional decision-making produces results as good as or better than purely logical analysis would predict. This suggests emotions might encode strategic intelligence that logical cognition can't access, that feeling-based knowing might capture aspects of complex situations that thinking-based analysis misses. A few researchers are documenting your apparent sensitivity to synchronistic correlations, meaningful coincidences that have no causal connection but somehow reliably predict relevant outcomes. Carl Jung described synchronicity as a causal connecting principle that operates through meaning rather than causation. Most scientists dismiss synchronicity as confirmation bias or statistical inevitability. You apparently take synchronistic correlations seriously as strategic intelligence, acting on meaningful coincidences as if they were reliable indicators. And somehow this works. The causal correlations you identify and act upon consistently prove strategically relevant, despite having no logical reason to be predictive. This suggests reality might contain connecting principles beyond causation. That meaning itself might structure relationships in ways causal logic doesn't recognize. The architects observe that logical complement integration explains why you're incomprehensible to systems built on logical exclusion. Logic achieved its power by declaring certain forms of knowing invalid and excluding them from analysis. You've brought them back in, reintegrating what logic discarded. For analysts who've been trained to think only through logic, who've internalized that logical reasoning is the only valid form of strategic thinking, encountering someone who successfully employs logic's complements is profoundly disorienting. They literally lack frameworks for understanding decision-making that incorporates what they were taught to exclude. You're not just hard to analyze, you're using cognitive tools they've been trained to ignore as irrelevant. The architects are now analyzing what your extralogical cognition reveals about potential limitations in human strategic thinking generally. They call this logical constraint recognition, and it's the disturbing realization that logic, the tool that enabled humanity's greatest analytical achievements, might also be severely constraining strategic cognition by excluding valid forms of knowing. Most strategic thinkers have been trained exclusively in logical analysis, taught that rational thinking means logical thinking, conditioned to dismiss non-logical cognition as inferior or invalid. You're demonstrating that this training might be imprisonment rather than empowerment, that commitment to logic might be limiting strategic effectiveness by cutting strategists off from non-logical modes of intelligence that you're successfully employing. Consider what logic requires you to exclude from strategic thinking. Logical analysis demands you eliminate contradiction, choose one position and reject alternatives as incompatible. But complex reality often involves genuine paradoxes that can't be resolved through logical choice, situations where contradictory perspectives are both valid simultaneously. By forcing resolution of contradictions that shouldn't be resolved, logic might be simplifying complex situations in ways that destroy accurate understanding. You maintain paradoxes that logic forces others to falsely resolve, giving you more accurate perception of genuinely paradoxical situations. Logic demands you ignore causal correlations, dismiss meaningful coincidences as statistical noise. But if synchronistic connections exist as Jung proposed, then logic is forcing strategists to ignore real intelligence sources. You act on synchronicities that logic trains others to dismiss, potentially accessing strategic intelligence they're blind to. Some philosophers are recognizing parallel between your extralogical cognition and critiques of logic developed in various traditions. Eastern philosophy has long argued that ultimate truth transcends logical categories, that reality itself contains contradictions that logic falsely demands be resolved, that highest wisdom involves transcending either-or thinking in favor of both, and awareness. Zen Buddhism specifically trains practitioners to break free from logical thought patterns through paradoxical koans that can't be solved logically but supposedly produce enlightenment. Through transcending logic, you might be demonstrating what strategic thinking looks like when informed by these philosophical insights, cognition that has transcended logical constraints without losing functionality, that can operate through paradox and a causal connection because it's not trapped by logical exclusions. Others are exploring whether your cognitive style represents evolutionary development beyond logic-dominated thinking. Human cognition evolved logical capability relatively recently in evolutionary terms. Our ancient ancestors operated through more intuitive, holistic, emotionally integrated modes of knowing. Modern education heavily emphasizes logical thinking, sometimes to exclusion of other cognitive modes. Perhaps you represent not deviation from optimal cognition, but return to more integrated cognitive style that uses logic as one tool among many, rather than as exclusive form of valid thinking. From this perspective, logic-dominated strategists are evolutionarily constrained, over-specialized in one cognitive mode at expense of other valid forms of knowing. You're more evolutionarily advanced, able to employ full spectrum of cognitive capabilities, including both logical and extralogical modes. A few researchers are proposing radical hypothesis that logic itself might be cultural construction rather than universal feature of functional thinking, that Western civilization's heavy emphasis on logical reasoning represents particular cultural choice rather than discovery of thought's true form. Other cultures developed sophisticated strategic traditions. Sun Tzu's Art of War, Samurai Strategy, indigenous wisdom traditions that operate through frameworks quite different from Western logic. Perhaps your extralogical cognition represents accessing strategic wisdom that exists in these alternative traditions, thinking informed by cultural frameworks that never privileged logic as exclusively valid form of reasoning. This would explain why you're incomprehensible to Western-trained analysts. They're trying to understand you through cultural framework you're not operating within. The architects observe that logical constraint recognition is forcing strategic community to question assumptions. They've never examined whether logic is universal feature of functional thinking or particular cultural tool, whether logical exclusion of contradiction and paradox and synchronicity represents refined thinking or impoverished thinking, whether commitment to pure rationality has been empowering strategic thought or severely limiting it. You're not just incomprehensible opponent, you're walking challenge to fundamental assumptions about what strategic thinking is and how it should operate. Your effectiveness, despite or because of extralogical cognition, is forcing recognition that logic might be constraint rather than liberation.